Hey guys, imagine for a moment that you could slip through the shadows of ancient Rome's most exclusive gatherings, not as a senator or a wealthy merchant, but as one of the musicians whose melodies filled marble halls while history's most powerful figures revealed their deepest secrets. Tonight, I'm taking you behind the velvet curtains and golden doorways into a world where emperors shed their public masks, where senators whispered treason over expensive wine, and where the fate of entire provinces was decided to the gentle accompaniment of a lyre. What did these musicians really witness? What scandals, what vulnerabilities, what moments of genuine humanity flickered in the lamplight of Rome's most private spaces? If these stories help you drift toward peaceful sleep, please like the video and let me know in the comments, where in the world are you listening from tonight? There's something beautifully connecting about knowing we're all settling into rest together across continents and time zones, united by these ancient whispers. Now, close your eyes and let your breathing slow. Picture yourself being born in Rome during the reign of Augustus, in a modest apartment above a bakery near the Subura district. The year is 15 CE, and the empire stretches from Britain to Egypt, from Spain to Syria. Your parents are hard-working people, your father a skilled carpenter who sometimes repairs instruments for local musicians, your mother a seamstress who embroiders tunics for the growing middle class. They notice early that you have an unusual gift. You can hear melodies in everything. The rhythmic hammering from your father's workshop becomes a song in your mind. The chatter of market vendors transforms into harmonious patterns. Even the clip-clop of donkey hooves on cobblestones creates music that makes you hum along unconsciously. Your childhood unfolds in the bustling, chaotic heart of the greatest city the world has ever known. Rome in the early 1st century is a marvel of contradictions. Gleaming marble temples rise above narrow, crowded streets where the poor struggle for survival. Aqueducts carry fresh water from distant mountains while open sewers flow beneath your feet. Exotic goods from the farthest reaches of the empire fill the markets: silk from China, spices from India, amber from the northern forests, pearls from the Persian Gulf. And everywhere, always, there is music. Street performers play on every corner, their voices rising above the general din. Religious processions wind through the streets with priests chanting ancient hymns. Taverns echo with drinking songs and bawdy ballads. Even the slaves sing as they work, their melodies carrying the rhythms of their distant homelands. In this cacophony of sound, your young ears learn to distinguish between different styles, different instruments, different emotional textures. You absorb it all like a sponge, your musical instincts growing stronger with each passing day. When you turn 8 years old, your parents make a decision that will change the course of your entire life. They approach Gaius Marcellus, a respected musician who performs regularly at the homes of wealthy Romans. Marcellus is a freedman, a former slave who earned his liberty through exceptional skill and has built a successful career entertaining the elite. He agrees to evaluate your potential, more as a favor to your father, who once repaired his prized cithara without charge, than from any expectation of finding genuine talent. The audition takes place in Marcellus's modest but comfortable home near the Campus Martius. The walls are decorated with frescoes depicting musical scenes from Greek mythology. Apollo with his golden lyre, the Muses inspiring mortal artists, Orpheus charming wild beasts with his melodies. The room smells of olive oil and beeswax, with a hint of the expensive perfumes that cling to the clothing of wealthy clients. Marcellus sits on a simple wooden stool, his weathered hands holding a small lyre, his eyes sharp and evaluating. He begins by playing a series of simple melodies, asking you to hum them back. Then he increases the complexity: syncopated rhythms, unusual intervals, quick transitions between different modes. Your voice follows each challenge effortlessly, and you find yourself unconsciously adding small embellishments, little flourishes that seem to emerge naturally from the musical line. Marcellus's expression shifts from polite interest to genuine surprise, then to something approaching excitement. Next comes the test of rhythm. He claps out patterns, some regular and predictable, others deliberately irregular, designed to trip up inexperienced ears. You not only repeat them perfectly, but begin to anticipate where the patterns are leading, sometimes finishing a sequence before he does. By the end of the hour, Marcellus has made his decision. He will take you as a student, but warns your parents that the path ahead will be demanding. A musician who aspires to perform for Rome's elite must master not just technical skill, but the subtle art of reading people, understanding social dynamics, and adapting to situations that can change in an instant. Your formal training begins immediately. Every morning before dawn, while the city still sleeps, you make your way through empty streets to Marcellus's house. The lessons start with exercises that seem to have nothing to do with music. Breathing techniques borrowed from actors, posture drills adapted from military training, memory games that strengthen your ability to retain vast repertoires of songs. Marcellus explains that a professional musician's instrument is not just the lyre or flute, but the entire body, the complete mind, the carefully cultivated persona that allows you to become invisible when necessary or command attention when required. The actual musical instruction unfolds gradually, systematically. You learn the Greek modes that form the foundation of Roman musical theory: Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, each with its own character, its own emotional associations, its own appropriate contexts. The Dorian mode is serious, suitable for religious ceremonies and solemn occasions. Phrygian carries an exotic flavor that Romans associate with Eastern mystery religions and ecstatic worship. Lydian feels bright and optimistic, perfect for celebrating victories or holidays. Mixolydian has a plaintive quality that works well for songs of love or loss. You practice scales until your fingers move automatically, until you can shift between modes without conscious thought. But Marcellus constantly reminds you that technique is only the beginning. The real skill lies in understanding how music affects people, how different melodies can calm anger, inspire courage, encourage intimacy, or maintain the delicate social balance that makes civilized gatherings possible. He tells you stories of musicians who failed because they played beautiful music at inappropriate moments, who drew attention when they should have faded into the background, who misread their audience and chose melodies that clashed with the mood of the room. As your skills develop, Marcellus begins taking you along to some of his smaller engagements: modest dinner parties in the homes of prosperous merchants, religious festivals at neighborhood temples, wedding celebrations for middle-class families. You sit in corners, watching and listening, learning to observe the subtle interactions that govern Roman social life. You notice how guests arrange themselves according to complex hierarchies of age, wealth, and status. You see how conversations flow and shift, how alliances form and dissolve over the course of an evening, how a single poorly chosen word or gesture can alter the dynamics of an entire gathering. Most importantly, you learn to watch the host. Every successful party depends on one person's ability to orchestrate the evening, to manage competing personalities, to ensure that everyone feels honored without anyone being overshadowed. The host's eyes constantly scan the room, looking for problems before they develop, opportunities to connect compatible guests, moments when intervention is needed to redirect conversations or smooth over awkwardness. And often, the host communicates with musicians through subtle signals: a raised eyebrow indicating that the music should grow louder to cover an uncomfortable silence, a slight hand gesture suggesting a change in tempo or mood. During these apprentice years, you also begin to understand the economic realities of a musician's life in Rome. The wealthy pay well, but they expect perfection. A single mistake can destroy a reputation that took years to build. The competition is fierce, with talented musicians arriving regularly from Greece, Asia Minor, and other culturally sophisticated provinces. Success requires not just musical ability, but social skills, business acumen, and the ability to navigate the complex web of relationships that connects Rome's elite families. You watch Marcellus manage his career with the same careful attention he brings to his music. He maintains friendships with other musicians, sharing information about potential opportunities and warning each other about difficult clients. He cultivates relationships with the stewards who manage wealthy households, knowing that a recommendation from a trusted servant can be more valuable than a formal audition. He studies the social calendars of prominent families, understanding the rhythms of the Roman year, which seasons bring the most lavish entertainments, which holidays offer the best opportunities for employment, which times of year the wealthy retreat to their country villas and take their favorite musicians with them. As your training progresses, you realize that becoming a successful musician in Rome means becoming a student of human nature, a silent observer of power and ambition, a keeper of secrets who must be trusted absolutely while remaining largely invisible. The melodies you learn are important, but the real education involves understanding the hidden currents that move beneath the surface of Roman society. The fears and desires that drive even the most powerful people, the private vulnerabilities that exist behind public masks, the moments of genuine emotion that break through the carefully maintained facades of imperial civilization. The years working under Marcellus blend dreamlike into each other. Days are measured not by the passing of seasons, but by the shifting melodies you master, by the different faces you meet in wealthy homes, by the constant buzz of anticipation before a new gathering. As you move from student to trusted assistant, Rome itself seems to open its doors one hidden chamber at a time, revealing both wonders and quiet dangers to those nimble enough and quiet enough to pass unnoticed. Your first performances are humble but revealing. Second or third musician at a festive dinner for a rising merchant, background flute player during a riverside wedding, or singer for light-hearted songs at the birthday of a senator's teenage daughter. Each context demands attentive observation. The Roman sense of occasion is a delicate thing, demanding that musicians support the mood but never dominate it, create beauty but never distraction. One of your earliest realizations is how different the world of Rome is when seen from the corner of a reception room compared to the view from the street. Most Romans, even the prosperous, rarely glimpse the opulence contained within the domus of the elite. You remember the shock of your first time inside a truly grand villa. Courtyards where orange trees bloom even in winter, mosaics underfoot so complex your eyes can track a river god's beard curling for hours, and the endless parade of house slaves who glide by in near silence with trays of perfumed water, steaming breads, and bowls of grapes as perfect as coins. You see little altars tucked into recesses, a mother lighting incense for her ancestors just before the guests arrive. Arriving early at these houses, you and Marcellus find yourself shown to small antechambers to prepare, tuning your lyre or practicing scale fragments under your breath. In these moments of waiting, you pay attention. Every sound and scent clues you in to the house's mood. Is the family nervous or excited? Are there too many voices in the kitchen, or are the slaves whispering with fear of a capricious mistress? Does the steward meet your eye and smile, or does he only regard the instruments, concerned for their gleam? You also learn how the night's atmosphere is shaped by the architecture itself. Some villas are designed for display grand open tricliniums, fountains splashing in rhythm, echoing halls where music and laughter are meant to swirl upward and out into the street, as if inviting all the city to know who is celebrating. Others are quieter, almost defensive, rooms full of shadows, small family portraits tucked behind tapestries, courtyards enclosed with trailing vines where guests seem hand-picked for mutual trust or for plotting. Each layout suggests the host's intent, but it's your job to feel the unspoken undercurrent and carry it, with gentleness, into every note you play. Marcellus is an unfailing guide in these first forays. You watch how he chooses not only the opening piece, but the way he stands, sometimes chatting discreetly with servants to learn about recent troubles or triumphs in the household. He encourages you to listen not only to what is said, but to what is left unstated. The quick look exchanged between rivals as they enter, the restrained manner of a wife next to her all too charismatic husband, the uneasy posture of a young heir recently come of age. He teaches you the secret languages of the trade, how to read a guest's gestures as a subtle request for a favorite song, how to recognize when the host wishes for the music to take center stage, and when to fade into the background, letting conversation and intrigue dominate. There are cues for shifting from slow, melodic laments that bring out nostalgia and soften tempers to bright, rhythmic dances that scatter tension and coax even the coldest guest to laughter. Sometimes he asks you to improvise, taking a simple tune and weaving it into a new form on the spot, a test not only of musicianship, but of your ability to read the air, as he says with a conspiratorial wink. As your reputation slowly grows, you're sometimes asked to play alone when Marcellus, trusting your intuition, is booked elsewhere. It is in these moments you begin to find your voice, not just as a musician, but as a figure whose very presence hints at something magical beneath ordinary life. You notice, for example, how the slaves often watch your hands, longing for music to transport them, if only for a moment, from their endless chores. Children approach shyly, and you play them little songs from your own childhood, a lullaby your mother sang, a rhythmic marching tune from a festival, a fragment of melody you invented on lonely walks through crowded streets. It is with them, and sometimes the more quiet, older guests, that you discover the hidden power of music as storytelling. Between dinner courses, you soften the room with gentle arpeggios as stories of the gods are shared, Jupiter's triumphs and jealousies, Venus, their favorite, whose image winks from every painted wall, heroes lost and lovers found through the force of fate and song. Sometimes, an old senator, eyes misting, will whisper to a grandchild, "Listen, this tune was played for me as a boy," and you realize your music is stitching new memories onto old ones, binding generations as gently as a ribbon woven through hair. You feel, too, the distinctions of class growing sharper the longer you move among these rooms. Though welcomed for your art, you are also invisible, an honored tool, perhaps, but never truly an equal. Wages are discussed in hushed tones with the steward, not the host. Praise, when it arrives, is brief, almost perfunctory, a nod and a coin pressed into your hand at the end of their laughter-filled night. Occasionally there is honest warmth, a merchant who tells you of his own father's folk songs from faraway provinces, or a matron who asks you to teach her daughter a quiet nocturne to ease her fears at night. But perhaps most illuminating are the moments of rupture, the party where an argument erupts and you must quickly steer your music from energetic to soothing, the banquet where a piece of scandalous news spreads from one couch to the next, laughter tinged with malice and delight as your notes struggle to patch over the sudden awkwardness. The evening when a grieving family requests nothing but the softest, most plaintive songs. You learn not only to observe, but to absorb, to turn sorrow into reassurance, joy into shared celebration, to use your art as both balm and spark. And so your apprenticeship stretches on. Through every performance, every lesson, every quietly observed conversation, you move further into Rome's hidden life, seeing not just the masks people wear for neighbors and the world, but the vulnerabilities, ambitions, hopes, and secrets that flicker beneath. Music is your passport, your shield, and, sometimes, your only true friend. Your reputation as a skilled and, more importantly, discreet musician begins to spread through Rome's interconnected web of wealthy families like ripples across a still pond. Word travels from steward to steward, from satisfied hostess to curious neighbor, from one dinner party to another. Soon, the modest engagements of your apprentice years give way to invitations that arrive sealed with increasingly prestigious family crests. Each new threshold you cross reveals layers of Roman society that most citizens never glimpse. A hidden world where true power flows not through public forums and grand ceremonies, but through intimate gatherings where the real decisions that shape an empire are made over wine and whispered confidences. The transition from background musician to trusted performer happens gradually, almost imperceptibly. You notice at first in the way servants greet you, no longer the polite but distant acknowledgement given to hired help, but the warmer recognition reserved for those who have proven their worth and reliability. Stewards begin seeking your advice about musical arrangements for upcoming events. Hostesses ask your opinion about which pieces would best complement their planned entertainments. Slowly, you realize that your role has evolved from merely providing atmospheric music to helping orchestrate the emotional journey of entire evenings. With this growing trust comes access to increasingly exclusive circles. The homes you enter become grander, the guest lists more carefully curated, the conversations more consequential. You find yourself performing in villas that are virtual museums, filled with artwork looted from conquered territories and sculptures that cost more than entire neighborhoods. Gardens stretch beyond sight, filled with exotic plants that require teams of specialists to maintain. Private baths rival the grandest public facilities, their walls covered in mosaics that tell stories of gods and heroes in precious stones. But it's not the luxury that captivates you most, it's the people. Away from the rigid formalities of public life, Rome's elite reveal themselves to be far more complex and human than their carefully constructed public personas suggest. You witness senators weeping openly at melancholy songs that remind them of fallen comrades. You see powerful matrons displaying encyclopedic knowledge of philosophy and literature while maintaining the fiction that they're merely decorative wives. You observe young men struggling with the weight of ancestral expectations while yearning for lives of their own choosing. The conversations you overhear while providing musical accompaniment offer glimpses into the machinery of empire that no historian will ever record. Governors discuss the real challenges of managing distant provinces, not the sanitized reports they send to the Senate, but the honest assessments of corruption, rebellion, and the impossibility of maintaining Roman order across such vast distances. Military commanders share their private doubts about upcoming campaigns, their concerns about troop morale, their fears that Rome's legendary invincibility may be more myth than reality. You learn to read the subtle cues that indicate when your music should mask particularly sensitive discussions. A slight gesture from the host means you should increase the volume to cover whispered negotiations about grain shipments that could determine whether distant cities face famine or prosperity. A meaningful glance suggests that your melodies should provide emotional cover for conversations about marriage alliances that will reshape the political landscape of entire regions. Sometimes you realize that your innocent-seeming performance is actually providing crucial camouflage for discussions that could be considered treasonous if overheard by the wrong ears. The women at these gatherings prove to be particularly fascinating. Roman law and custom may restrict their official roles, but within the intimate confines of private parties, their influence becomes clear. You watch as senators' wives coordinate complex political strategies through seemingly casual conversations about social events. Wealthy widows wield their inherited fortunes like weapons, funding causes and candidates while maintaining plausible deniability about their political involvement. Young women of powerful families demonstrate shrewd understanding of economics and foreign policy that would impress their male counterparts if those men were secure enough to acknowledge feminine intelligence. The entertainment at these exclusive gatherings extends far beyond your musical contributions. Professional dancers perform elaborate choreographed pieces that tell stories of mythical seductions and divine interventions. Poets recite new verses that cleverly reference current political events through classical metaphors. Actors present scenes from beloved plays, adapting them to comment on contemporary personalities and situations. Your music weaves through all of these performances, sometimes supporting them, sometimes providing transition between acts, always helping to maintain the delicate balance between entertainment and instruction that characterizes the best Roman hospitality. Food becomes theatre at these events. Courses arrive that are as much art as sustenance. Elaborate sculptures made from exotic ingredients, dishes that reference classical literature or contemporary jokes, presentations that require explanation and interpretation. You play specific melodies to accompany certain dishes, your music helping to create the appropriate atmosphere for each culinary revelation. The wines served are themselves stories, vintages from famous vineyards, bottles aged for decades, blends that represent the empire's vast reach and sophisticated trade networks. As the evenings progress and wine loosens tongues, you witness moments of startling honesty. Powerful men admit their fears about the future of the empire. Wealthy women confess their frustrations with the limitations placed on their ambitions. Young people express doubts about whether they want to follow in their parents' footsteps. These revelations never feel like dramatic confessions. They emerge naturally from the atmosphere of trust and intimacy that skillful hosts create and that your music helps sustain. You begin to understand that these private gatherings serve multiple functions beyond mere entertainment. They are informal tribunals where disputes are resolved without involving official courts. They are marriage markets where alliances between families are negotiated through seemingly casual introductions. They are intelligence networks where information flows between individuals who could never be seen meeting publicly. They are therapy sessions where the psychological costs of wielding power can be acknowledged and processed in safety. The children present at family gatherings offer their own insights into Roman elite culture. You watch as they're carefully taught the social skills they'll need to navigate this complex world, how to read facial expressions and body language, how to contribute to conversations without dominating them, how to show respect for their elders while asserting their own intelligence. Some children seem naturally gifted at these social arts, while others struggle visibly with the pressure to perform appropriately in every interaction. Your position as musician grants you a unique perspective on these family dynamics. Parents often request specific songs that hold special meaning for their households, lullabies passed down through generations, melodies associated with deceased relatives, tunes that commemorate important family events. Playing these pieces allows you to witness the softer emotions that Roman Stoicism typically conceals, the genuine affection between spouses, the pride parents feel in their children's accomplishments, the grief that lingers years after losses. As your reputation grows, you begin receiving invitations to more specialized gatherings. Some parties are essentially business meetings disguised as social events, where trade deals worth fortunes are negotiated over seemingly casual meals. Others are cultural salons where intellectuals debate philosophy and literature while you provide contemplative background music. Still others are political strategy sessions, where the future direction of the empire is planned by people whose names will never appear in official records. Each type of gathering requires different musical approaches. Business meetings call for steady, unobtrusive melodies that won't distract from important negotiations. Cultural salons prefer more complex, intellectually engaging pieces that complement the elevated discourse. Political gatherings often need music that can quickly shift to mask sensitive discussions or create emotional atmospheres that support particular arguments. The seasonal rhythms of Roman social life become intimately familiar to you. Spring brings celebrations of renewal and new beginnings, with music that reflects hope and energy. Summer festivals call for livelier entertainment as families retreat to country villas for extended vacations. Autumn gatherings often have a more serious tone as people return to the city and resume their public duties. Winter parties tend toward intimacy and reflection, with music that supports deep conversations and philosophical contemplation. Through all of these experiences, you develop an almost supernatural ability to read social situations and respond appropriately. You learn to recognize the signs of brewing conflicts before they erupt into open disagreements. You master the art of using music to diffuse tension, redirect conversations, and create emotional bridges between incompatible personalities. Your lyre becomes an instrument of diplomacy as much as entertainment, helping to maintain the delicate social harmony that makes civilized life possible. As seasons slip by, your invitations come gilded with thicker wax seals, bolder symbols, even the sharp scent of expensive Eastern perfumes on many envelopes. These details signal exclusivity and, for a musician, the knowledge that you are now trusted enough to step into the innermost sancta of Rome's ruling class. You had become a familiar presence in homes perched high on the Aventine or deep in the maze of the Palatine, places where politics, passion, and peril mix in equal measure. You discover that not all private parties are the same. Some are vast, humming like beehives with dozens of guests. Others are intimate, reserved for 3 or 4 confederates, shielded from the world by thick curtains, guards at every door, and diffused light from painted lanterns meant to flatter aging faces. Each of these evenings is a tapestry layers of public performance, semi-private intrigue, and, always, silent observation. From your corner, your first role is to read the weave. Early in the evening, you drift from room to room, lyre in hand, sampling the atmosphere. Where do the sharpest glances fly? Who moves with self-assurance? Who with studied caution? Sometimes you find yourself stationed in an atrium overflowing with laughter and song. Other nights you play barely a whisper in a side chamber where negotiation and secrets are currency as potent as gold. The center of the Roman elite's private life is always power. While your music flutters in the air, men and women drift closer and apart, drawing alliances with a handshake, unraveling them with a sardonic glance. You notice rival households sending representatives to the same party, masked as friends, each competing to draw the favor of the night's host. A word, a look, even your choice of tune can tip the emotional temperature, so you learn to choose wisely. A hopeful, rising melody to buoy reconciliation, a purposeful rhythm to deflate tension, gentle harmonic laughter to thaw icy silences during awkward toasts. You come to understand the invisible language of hand signals and subtle cues. In conversation, the flick of a wrist means play louder, or 2 extended fingers, unnoticed by most, demand a joyful air to steer away from dangerous topics. Veteran musicians can keep an entire feast flowing just by responding to these mute instructions, guiding the mood like a steady tiller in stormy waters. Sometimes, however, subtlety is not enough. You witness dramas played out on scales both tremendous and tragic. Confessions shouted through tears after too much Falernian wine, reconciliation between estranged friends celebrated by laughter and spontaneous dance. There are jealousies too, sharp as knives, a senator's wife glancing daggers at her husband's lover across the table, while your own gentle nocturne barely covers the turbulence brewing just out of polite hearing. It is not always anger or rivalry that simmers beneath the surface. Love, longing, and genuine tenderness appear, fleeting and powerful. You once played for a secret wedding, just 2 witnesses and a nervous young couple whose families would never accept their union. They chose a song from far-off Gaul, and as you played the lilting, unfamiliar melody, you watched as they clung to each other, every note weaving the first precious threads of a new family that would remain hidden until the world became a gentler place. Perhaps the most astonishing evenings are those in which power shifts, a political alliance cemented with the quiet handshake of 2 elderly rivals, high officials smoothing over rebellion in a distant province by promising, with a quiet nod and your music as witness, relief from an unfair tax. Later, whispers would pass through Rome about how a new peace or war was born, always with a hint that something pivotal happened at a certain villa, at a certain party, in the company of unseen observers. For you, the musician, these acts are at once thrilling and lonely. You are both present and apart, privileged to bear witness but expected to remain invisible. You become protector of secrets. After a party, as you walk home along the misty curves of the Tiber, the city's lamps glittering through the fog, you carry in your memory 1,000 heartbeats, scandalous liaisons, world-altering bargains, tearful declarations of regret. None are yours to repeat. In this, you share a tacit kinship with the slaves who sweep the floors in silence at dawn, with the kitchen girls who whisper behind closed doors, and even, perhaps especially, with the host who greets you at the door each evening with a cautious, searching smile. The politics are exhausting for everyone. You see it in the eyes of the weary senators whose ambition robs them of sleep, in the tense hands of wives desperate to secure better futures for their children, in the taut postures of young heirs compelled by lineage, by fear, by pride to perform even here in supposed safety. Sometimes your post-performance song is a requiem for innocence, a lullaby you play long after guests have left and the lights have gone down, for the peace that remains elusive in the churning storm of Roman society. Amid all this, love for your art deepens. You understand what a rare gift it is to be the quiet pulse at the centre of so much change, to offer solace without judgment, to serve as unwritten chronicle for the city's private dreams and griefs. Few know your name outside these walls. Fewer still would remember you in public. But here, beneath frescoed ceilings and marble gods, you become indispensable, a shadow weaving music through the greatest intrigues of the age. If you wish, leave a comment asking for a full night's story on the high politics, betrayals, and covert loves you witnessed as a Roman musician. The invitation arrives on a morning when frost covers the cobblestones of Rome like scattered diamonds. The messenger who delivers it wears the deep purple cloak of the Imperial household, and the seal pressed into the wax bears the unmistakable eagle and laurel of the Palatine. Your hands tremble slightly as you break the seal and read the brief formal summons. You are requested to provide musical entertainment at a private gathering in the Emperor's personal quarters. No details are given about the occasion, the other guests, or even which emperor will be present, for in these turbulent times, power sometimes shifts like shadows at sunset, and discretion demands that such information remain unwritten. You spend the day in careful preparation, selecting your finest instrument, a lyre whose wood has been polished to mirror brightness, whose strings sing with crystalline purity. Your clothes are chosen with equal care, a tunic of pristine white linen, a cloak dyed in the subtle grey that marks you as neither slave nor citizen of the highest rank, but something in between, a skilled craftsman whose art grants access to spaces normally forbidden. You bathe with particular attention, understanding that imperial servants have senses trained to detect any hint of disrespect or carelessness. Every detail of your appearance must whisper competence and trustworthiness. As evening approaches, you make your way through Rome's winding streets toward the Palatine Hill. The city below bustles with its usual chaos, merchants closing their stalls, children chasing each other through narrow alleys, the eternal murmur of a million voices speaking a dozen languages. But as you climb the marble steps that lead to the Imperial complex, the noise fades away, replaced by an almost sacred silence that seems to emanate from the very stones beneath your feet. Guards in gleaming armor watch your approach with eyes that miss nothing, their hands resting casually on sword hilts that have tasted blood in defense of Caesars. The palace itself is a labyrinth of corridors, courtyards, and chambers that seem to stretch beyond the bounds of possibility. Frescoes cover every wall, scenes of military triumph, divine intervention, and imperial virtue that serve as constant reminders of the power that dwells here. Mosaics underfoot tell stories in coloured stone, while statues of gods and deified emperors stand sentinel in shadowed alcoves. The air carries scents of exotic incense, rare perfumes, and the faintest hint of the spiced wine that flows like water in these rarefied spaces. A silent slave, his movements so graceful they seem choreographed, leads you through passageways you never knew existed. Some are broad and magnificent, designed to impress visitors with imperial grandeur. Others are narrow and utilitarian, meant for servants who must move unseen through the palace's daily operations. You realize that you are being conducted along one of these hidden routes, not because you are unworthy of the grander passages, but because tonight's gathering demands the utmost discretion. Eventually, you arrive at a chamber that takes your breath away. It is smaller than you expected, intimate rather than imposing, but every surface speaks of wealth beyond imagination. The walls are covered in silk tapestries imported from the distant lands of the Ceres, their patterns shifting and changing in the flickering light of golden lamps. The floor is a masterpiece of mosaic art, depicting scenes from the Odyssey in stone so perfectly matched they seem to glow with inner fire. Furniture carved from rare woods and inlaid with ivory and precious metals creates comfortable seating arrangements that encourage both conversation and contemplation. But it is the other occupants of the room that truly command your attention. You recognize some faces from coins and statues, though seeing them in person, relaxed and unguarded, is a revelation that leaves you momentarily speechless. The emperor himself reclines on a couch covered in purple silk, his laurel crown set aside on a nearby table like a casual afterthought. Around him, a carefully chosen circle of advisors, family members, and trusted friends create an atmosphere that feels more like an extended family gathering than an official state function. Your training takes over, and you find your designated spot in an alcove where your music can fill the room without your presence becoming intrusive. You begin with gentle, familiar melodies, pieces that provide a pleasant backdrop without demanding attention. From this position, you become privy to conversations that could reshape the known world, discussions conducted in the casual tones of people who assume their privacy is absolute and their power unquestionable. The topics range from the mundane to the momentous. You hear detailed discussions about grain shipments that will determine whether distant provinces prosper or starve. Military campaigns are planned with the same casual attention that other people might give to organizing a hunting expedition. The fates of entire kingdoms are decided based on the personal preferences and prejudices of individuals whose names will echo through history for millennia. What strikes you most forcefully is the humanity of these figures who loom so large in the public imagination. The emperor worries about his children's education and his wife's health with the same intensity that any father might display. Senators reveal genuine friendships that transcend political calculations. Generals speak with pain about soldiers lost in distant battles, their grief as real and raw as any parent mourning a child. The entertainment provided for these intimate imperial gatherings goes far beyond anything you've witnessed in even the grandest private homes. Dancers perform elaborate pieces that tell stories known only to the imperial family, inside jokes and references that date back generations, creating bonds of shared memory and understanding. Poets recite verses that reference current events with stunning boldness, secure in the knowledge that their words will never be repeated beyond these walls. Actors present scenes from classical plays, but adapt them to comment cleverly on contemporary political situations and personalities. Your music weaves through all of these performances, sometimes supporting them directly, sometimes providing counterpoint that adds layers of meaning to the entertainment. You learn to read the emperor's mood through subtle changes in posture and expression, adjusting your melodies to match his emotional state. When he seems thoughtful, you play contemplative pieces that encourage reflection. When he grows animated in conversation, you provide energetic rhythms that support the excitement in the room. The food served at these imperial gatherings represents the pinnacle of Roman culinary art. Dishes arrive that combine ingredients from the farthest reaches of the empire. Peacocks stuffed with songbirds and exotic fruits, wines aged in caves that were ancient when Rome was founded, spices worth more than most citizens earn in a lifetime. Each course is accompanied by explanations of its significance, stories about the regions where the ingredients originated, discussions of the political and economic relationships that make such luxury possible. As the evening progresses and wine flows more freely, the conversations become increasingly candid. You witness debates about imperial policy that reveal fundamental disagreements between people who must present unified faces in public. Family tensions emerge that complicate official successions and alliances. Personal animosities surface that help explain seemingly inexplicable political decisions that will puzzle historians for centuries to come. The women present at these gatherings wield influence that would astonish the general population. Wives of emperors speak with authority about foreign policy and domestic affairs. Daughters of powerful families demonstrate deep understanding of economics and military strategy. Some of the most important decisions affecting the empire emerge from conversations between women whose official roles are purely ceremonial, but whose unofficial power is vast and carefully concealed. Children, when present, are treated as serious participants rather than mere decorations. Young members of imperial families are expected to contribute meaningfully to discussions to demonstrate their readiness for the responsibilities they will inherit. You watch as boys barely into their teens debate complex questions of governance with adults who have spent lifetimes learning statecraft. Girls display knowledge of literature, philosophy, and history that would impress the most learned scholars. The weight of secrets you carry grows heavier with each passing hour. Every conversation you overhear, every gesture you observe, every relationship you witness could be significant to historians, politicians, or foreign enemies. Yet your position demands absolute discretion. You are a living repository of information that could topple governments or start wars, but you must remain as silent as the marble statues that observe these gatherings with stone eyes. Late in the evening, when only the most trusted intimates remain, the emperor sometimes requests private performances. These are moments of extraordinary privilege and responsibility. Alone with the most powerful person in the known world, you must choose music that matches his mood, anticipates his needs, provides the emotional support that even emperors require. Sometimes he requests specific pieces, melodies associated with deceased relatives, songs from his childhood, tunes that remind him of happier times before the weight of absolute power settled on his shoulders. In these intimate moments, you see the terrible isolation that comes with ultimate authority. Surrounded by advisors, protected by armies, worshipped by millions, the emperor is often the loneliest person in the room. Your music becomes his only honest companion, the one presence that demands nothing, judges nothing, simply offers beauty without agenda or expectation. As dawn approaches and the gathering finally dissolves, you pack your instruments with hands that have provided soundtrack to history. The gold you receive is generous beyond anything you've earned elsewhere, but the real payment is the knowledge that your art has touched the very apex of human power, creating moments of beauty and humanity in the presence of those who shape the destiny of the known world. After nights spent in the palace or the grand estates, the walk home is its own ritual, a time for silence that is almost sacred, for unraveling the tangled threads of everything you have seen and heard. Rome's streets at midnight are a different world. The riotous noise of day gives way to a slow, shuffling hush. Lanterns flicker weakly, casting wavering halos onto cobblestones wet with dew. The air is scented with smoke, roasted barley, and the faint brine that drifts up from the Tiber. As a musician, you navigate these shadows with ease, your fingers still tingling from hours of playing, your mind crowded by the vivid phantoms of every party's voices, laughter, and secrets. The contrast between public spectacle and the genuine private confessions you witness cannot be overstated. Most of Rome will never know the depth of loneliness behind a senator's hearty laugh, or the way a highborn matron's polite compliments mask fierce ambition or heartbreak. You walk past open windows where servants whisper about the night's guests. Sometimes you're called to by name, offered scraps of bread or wine from kitchens winding down after banquets. The city's slaves recognize you, and you them. Both live at the edge of visibility, privy to a Rome that is rarely spoken of, let alone written down. A boy in rags asks you softly to play for him, and you oblige. A few gentle notes on your lyre, an ancient lullaby that calms even his restless spirit. Arriving at your modest lodging, far from the opulent avenues, you return to a world that is mostly humble, bare walls, threadbare blankets, a chipped cup for water and wine. Yet in this simplicity there's a measure of peace. You light a lamp and sit by the window, looking out at Rome's rooftops, listening to the stray notes of distant parties that float over gardens and alleyways. Sometimes you replay the events of the evening in your mind, cataloguing what was said, what remained silent, weighing the sense of privilege against the strange ache left by so much secrecy. The solitude is necessary for survival. Inside your room, you cleanse yourself not just physically but emotionally. You replay the most charged moments in your music, a senator's trembling voice as he confessed worry over the fate of his province, a young bride's hidden tears discreetly wiped away while her husband toasted their future with forced bravado, the quiet pride in the emperor's eyes as he watched his children succeed in a game of philosophy and wits. Each of these memories becomes a quiet refrain, a tune that you hum to the empty night. Writing music at these hours is different from rehearsing for the next performance. You let your fingers wander without aim, searching for melodies that express the deep complexity of everything you've absorbed. The music is raw, sometimes mournful, sometimes hopeful, often indescribably bittersweet. You realize that much of what you play in public will never capture the depths reached in these private nocturnes. You begin to keep notes, scraps of parchment filled with musical ideas, fragments of overheard speeches, descriptions of the laughing, weeping, scheming faces that have passed across your vision like fleeting shadows. You understand that your work is more archival than performative. You are, in some ways, a living record. Music is your language, but memory is your true vocation. The challenge is balancing candor and discretion. The stories you witness could topple dynasties or heal ancient rifts, but your integrity is your most irreplaceable possession. You practice silence not out of fear but out of respect for the art, for the power of trust, for the lives entrusted to your careful, invisible empathy. Once in a while, a fellow musician visits after a long night in another part of the city. You share wine and compare notes, cultural and political gossip, the subtleties of a particular hostess's taste in music, the unpredictable reactions of guests, the impact of a particular song on a particular heart. These conversations confirm what you already sense. Each musician serves as a quiet keystone in Rome's emotional architecture. Alone you observe, but together you understand the full measure of what music does in the empire. Season after season, the rhythm remains, public spectacle, private drama, midnight reflection, the slow, sometimes painful growth that comes with bearing this strange and beautiful responsibility. In time, you develop your own routines and rituals. You might walk the forum at sunrise before most citizens awake, watching the marble gleam with possibility as the city prepares for another day of ambition. You visit small shrines, lighting incense and offering silent prayers for those who shared their secrets with you the night before. For musicians, the city is always awake, always listening. Even in darkness and exhaustion, you hear echoes that guide your choices. Some noble, some ignoble, all profoundly human. Your sleep is filled with dreams not just of songs, but of the faces that float across history's stage, reminding you of your singular vantage point, not ruler or ruled, but chronicler in melody, a witness to the nightly unmasking of Rome. If you'd like a video dedicated to the solitude and reflection behind Rome's great parties, the private world of the artist returning home, let me know in the comments. When the nights lengthen and the cold creeps in, Saturnalia arrives, a week where Rome transforms itself and musicians hold a special place in the swirling chaos. If you are used to playing for order, etiquette, and precisely choreographed gatherings, Saturnalia is both a test and a release, a thunderclap of reversal when all social masks are temporarily discarded, and laughter surges through every street and every villa. The city itself changes. You wake to garlands strung from windows, children racing down alleyways in painted masks, slaves trading cloaks and jokes with their masters, and even the stern statues in the forum draped with festive hats or holly wreaths. Everyone becomes a participant in this joyful rebellion. Even the old men and cautious matrons set aside dignity and let mirth rule. As a musician, your role becomes more fluid than ever. Villas that once rang with polite applause now erupt with wild dances. By day, you might be invited to serenade a band of revelers who parade through the markets, their faces painted, arms entwined, tossing dice and singing bawdy songs at the top of their lungs. By night, you find yourself in houses lit with 100 candles, where tables groan with food and the laughter never dies, not even when dawn faintly brushes the city's rooftops with silver. Inside these houses, the ancient rules are upended. You witness scenes impossible at any other time. The family's oldest slave sitting at the head of the table, toasted as King of Misrule, ordering his masters to pour him cup after cup of wine, or to dance the silliest dance until the whole room collapses in laughter. This king might banish gloomy thoughts, make his former superiors recite verses or compete in impromptu riddles, sometimes command you, the musician, to invent a melody on the spot, something wild, something never heard before for that night alone. Freed from their usual chores, slaves surround you in the peristyle, faces alive with joy, requesting tunes from their childhoods. The sharp, rhythmic songs of Africa, the slow laments of Asia Minor, the quick jigs of Gaul. For once, you are not playing at the command of the city's most powerful, but at the heart of a shared, rowdy democracy. You hear stories whispered by those who are often silent, tales of separation, hope, and clever defiance woven into the winding dance lines that snake through kitchen, garden, and hall. Meanwhile, the wealthy let down their guard, acting out parodies of their fellow guests, or, emboldened by drink, confessing the kinds of honest hopes and regrets no sober Roman would ever allow to slide past his lips. One night you watch a proud senator, known for his thunderous speeches, fall to his knees and propose to a kitchen girl. Another night, a dignified matron sings a comic ballad explaining why geese are Rome's truest protectors. Each of these moments is underscored by your music, cheeky marches, clownish flourishes, sudden dreamy serenades that make even the hardest heart soften for an instant. The tempo of Saturnalia is relentless, both for the servants who suddenly find themselves guests and for musicians whose fingers never really rest. You adapt quickly, learning that the greatest applause comes not for polished perfection, but for clever improvisation, for a willingness to let yourself laugh along, to become part of the rowdy theatre rather than its solemn soundtrack. Mistakes are cherished, and every stumble in song becomes another excuse for howls of delight. In these moments, barriers dissolve. There is a peculiar, almost sacred intimacy in the shared exhaustion at dawn. Slaves, masters, Romans, foreigners, servants, and musicians breathing together in a room that smells of wax, spilled wine, and oranges. You find yourself lying on mosaic floors beside young boys who will, in summer, march in legion, and old women who in spring will return to their role as strict household arbiters. Here and now, just for these few nights, everyone is one. When the holiday at last dims and order returns, you feel another layer of your city's soul. Saturnalia is not escapism, you realize, but renewal. A deep collective exhale, a reminder that beneath ambition, rivalry, and pride, everyone in Rome is bound by laughter, by longing, and by the secret need for song. It is a lesson that fills your music with new tenderness, a mischievous hope you will carry back into the serious duties of the months ahead. After Saturnalia fades and order returns to the city, the air is tinged with excitement of a softer, more secret kind. Now, at private parties, you begin to see music's power as a vessel for love and longing, a bridge between glances, a language richer than words, a force that shapes destinies in ways subtle and profound. In Rome, matters of romance are never simple, and for musicians, these are the nights when every melody feels charged with the hush of forbidden dreams and secret silent pacts. You soon discover that music is woven through the dance of seduction. The host's choice of songs signals intentions, tender nocturnes when a guest wants to impress, playful dances when matches are being made, or passionate laments when lovers must say goodbye. You learn how to modulate tension and teasing with every phrase, watching for sparks between guests. a hand lingering too long over a goblet, a smile exchanged beneath the low flicker of lamps, a pair slipping into the courtyard for privacy as your soft serenade disguises their departure. On these nights, you notice how Roman courtship blurs boundaries between public and private. In grand dining halls, parents orchestrate chance encounters, seating eligible daughters near rising young senators, weaving conversation from mythic love stories to witty banter. You play melodies from famous romantic tragedies, knowing each note will stir hearts and memories, acting as a gentle nudge toward vulnerability in a culture that often prizes control. But beneath these orchestrated pairings, secret affairs flourish. Servants tip you off with knowing glances. A matron's discreet gesture requests a song only she and her lover understand, a tune from distant Greece perhaps, echoing a stolen summer in Corinth. You play, whether for official or clandestine romance, with the same commitment to discretion, letting your music bear witness while remaining silent about each private drama. Sometimes you become the confidant of young lovers, approached after the party for advice or comfort. A shy poet might ask you for a melody to woo his beloved, a merchant's daughter for an accompaniment to a song she dares not sing in public. You become as much a counselor as an entertainer. Your music offers reassurance, your experience quiets fears, your presence promises sanctuary for hearts at risk in the city's thrilling but unforgiving maze. For those already bound in marriage, music sparks renewal. Couples request the songs of their courtship, wrapping themselves in the memories of youth, laughter, and hope. You witness the slow rekindling of affection between partners worn down by years of worry and duty, their faces softening as old tunes bring new warmth. Even the cynical senators who mask their feelings with bravado grow thoughtful and quiet on these evenings, your music inviting, just for a moment, the tenderness that power too often suppresses. Romance in Rome is never free from shadow. Jealousies brew when affections stray, rivalries ignite when love triangles develop beneath veiled innuendo. You sense the danger as surely as any hostess, the tension that crackles between old friends when new passion is discovered, the raw grief or anger behind a politely raised cup. Sometimes music becomes your only shield, soothing the wounded, masking the more turbulent emotions until the gathering finds its balance again. Yet for all the intrigue, the beauty stands out. On humid summer nights, you play beneath open skies, watching lovers dance barefoot on mosaic patios, lantern light flickering across bare shoulders and starlit faces. You play lullabies for babies born of these unions, songs that, years later, children will ask you to repeat, marveling at the music that stitched their parents together in secret moments. More than once, a couple requests a private performance in the garden after guests have departed. As you play, their whispered promises mingle with your melodies, their laughter becomes the rhythm, their gentle silences become the rests between notes. Sometimes you realize, as dawn spills over Rome, that you've helped write the first chapter of a new story, a romance that will alter not only lives, but fortunes, alliances, and the shape of the city itself. Music, you realize, is the lifeblood of Roman romance. A force that heals, unites, confesses, and, occasionally, disrupts. The tales you witness become your own silent treasure, fueling your art and sense of purpose, carrying you into each new night with both caution and hope. If you'd like a full video focused on music as the secret witness to Roman love, let me know in the comments. After nights of laughter and romance, life in Rome demands the other face of music, comfort in sorrow, a hand guiding souls through mourning and memory. As a musician trusted in elite households, you are often called to the quietest, most private gatherings, not only to celebrate, but to honor losses, soothe grief, and help the great and small alike remember those who have departed. Death in Rome is not rare. Here, the echoes of loss mix with the city's perfumes and prayers, mothers gone too soon, children lost to fever, patriarchs and matriarchs taken at the height of their wisdom. Even emperors, seemingly invincible, mourn sons and wives, lost comrades or rivals who were once close as brothers. In these moments, your music is no entertainment. It's a salve, a bridge between worlds, and a subtle ritual of healing that unfolds quietly beneath the gilded ceilings and within the walled gardens of Rome's privileged classes. You learn that every mourning rite is as unique as the person it honors. Some families insist upon the strictest formality, draping the house in black, lighting lamps through the night, inviting only close kin and the oldest of friends. Others want small, intimate gatherings, memories shared through gentle laughter and the hush of tears. Always, it is your music that signals the mood, the first soft descending notes as the mourners enter, the echo of ancient laments, the familiar lullabies that once comforted the departed as children. You choose pieces carefully, consulting with matriarchs and grown sons, sifting through repertoires for melodies that evoke shared memories, or simply fill the room with enough softness that sorrow becomes gentle, bearable. From your place beside the altar or beneath a vine-draped pergola, you become a silent guide. When the household is ready, you begin to play the Carmen Lugubra, the ancient Roman funeral dirge. Its minor key wraps grief like a cloak over every shoulder, drawing forth tears that, in this society, must sometimes be coaxed from behind stoic masks. In other houses, you are asked for hopeful songs, hymns that speak of the soul's peaceful passage, of renewal, legacy, and the ways that love outlasts even the hardest parting. Often you watch as children gather near, holding each other, eyes wide with the first true knowledge of sadness. You soften your strings for them, playing the playful tunes their lost sibling loved, or the peaceful melody a father used to whistle at work. Memory becomes music, and music, for a while, lightens memory, with each note a thread tying the living to the departed just long enough for acceptance to settle. Beyond the family, you note the subtler gestures of the household slaves, sometimes grieving more openly than their masters are allowed. You play for them too, recognizing that beneath rank, everyone shares loss in much the same way. One old cook requests a simple shepherd's song, bringing to mind childhood among distant Gallic hills. A nanny asks for a lullaby taught to her by the very child who has now gone ahead. In granting these requests, however quietly, your music becomes a blessing for all who mourn under Rome's many roofs. Not all grief is solitary. The city turns out in throngs for great funerals, marches along the Via Sacra with processions and chanted prayers, the air thick with incense and the echo of drums. You play at some of these, your instrument almost inaudible beneath the chorus of priests and wailing women, yet somehow essential to the sacred rhythm of public farewell. Yet it is in the hush of quieter nights, after the crowds depart and the house grows silent, that your music finds its deepest purpose. You linger with the bereaved, playing quietly as candles burn low, helping memory fade at the pace the heart can handle. Sometimes you are called back months or years later to play the favorite song of the departed at a birthday, a dinner, a casual family gathering. The music kindles remembrance, opens laughter and tears in equal measure, and you sense the circle of life and loss made gentler because a melody was there to steady it. For you, as a musician, these moments shape your art. You become more patient, more careful with every choice, knowing that music has the power to wound, but also, beautifully, to heal. In time, you realize that these are among your greatest gifts, not applause or silver coins, but a quiet nod from someone who, for a little while, found rest in the patterns your fingers wove. With all its ceremony, ambition, and spectacle, Rome is above all a city of rites and rituals. Every household has its private gods, every neighborhood its shrines, every noble lineage its ancestral altar. And at the heart of these layers of faith, musicians are ever-present, trusted to give voice not just to human passion or grief, but to the hopes, prayers, and fears that stretch beyond the mortal realm. As a musician, you learn that your art is woven through with the sacred, echoing through marble temples and shadowy tablinums, calling out to the countless gods and spirits watching from just beyond the lamplight. In noble houses, no feast begins without offerings. The lares and penates household deities receive a morsel, a whispered thank you, and, almost always, a simple song. Sometimes you are called to compose quiet hymns for these moments, little pieces full of gratitude, hope, or supplication. You see powerful men and women bow their heads, close their eyes, and let your music translate what their pride cannot say aloud: the fear of illness, the hope for a child, the longing for a sign that ancestors still walk beside the living. Each blessing is a duet between your hands and their hearts. Wider rituals draw musicians into the very engine of Rome's faith. In the great temples, Jupiter on the Capitoline, Isis beside the Tiber, mysterious Cybele howling atop the Palatine, you play in the thick of incense, torchlight trembling on marble, and the low hum of hundreds at prayer. Your role here differs from private parties. Your melodies must sway the massed crowd, sync with priestly chants, lift the voices of those calling down omens or guidance from above. During the festival of Lupercalia, for instance, you accompany wild choral dances. At Vesta's sacred fire, your soft notes frame the silence between chants, moments when everyone waits for the goddess's invisible presence to be felt. Yet the most profound experiences come from Rome's secret faiths, the mystery cults hidden in cellars and courtyard gardens, where initiates gather by invitation only. Here, you are witness to ecstasies unimagined by the sober world above. You play as men and women, masked and veiled, move in trance, their bodies stirring in rhythm to your flute and lyre, their voices weaving ancient languages with the fervor of revelation. In these shadowy halls, the boundary between music and prayer dissolves entirely. Your chords summon the god, hold back the night, and linger softly when at last dawn returns. Even the emperors, for all their public skepticism, rely on music at moments of uncertainty. Called to the palace during an ill-omened eclipse or a political crisis, you play both to calm the imperial household and to provide an audible plea to fate. Sometimes it works. A cloud lifts, a sick child recovers, a decision is made with clear mind. Sometimes it does not. Either way, your art is part of the ritual, part of the story, indelibly woven into every hope or fear uttered behind Rome's closed doors. Children learn faith through song. You teach the basic prayers to servants and masters alike, training choirs for Saturn's birthday, rehearsing the blessing before bread, guiding a trembling boy or girl through the first note they ever sing to their ancestors' spirits. By adulthood, everyone in Rome knows at least the refrain of 100 hymns, and many have a tune or two they claim came to them alone during prayer. You smile when you hear these private miracles, knowing that usually they began with a lullaby or vignette you once shared on a drowsy afternoon. There are darker times as well. During plagues or disasters, music becomes both shield and salve. Together with the priests, you play while crowds move through the streets, bearing incense and offerings, chanting to ward off calamity. You see the power of communal hope, how even the most terrifying nights are softened when song knits many hearts into one. The awe and humility of this work never leave you. Kneeling beside a matron as she thanks the gods for a daughter's safe return, adding music to an initiation where masks drop and the most powerful in Rome weep like children, feeling your own spirit rise in the great temples as trumpet and drum conjure awe in hundreds of eyes. You realize your place is not only at the tables of the mighty, but at the threshold between world and mystery. You stand with your instrument, echoing the first prayers ever lifted skyward, holding space for wonder in a city endlessly spinning between the sacred and the profane. Behind every note you play in Rome's grandest houses lies a complex economy that few outside the trade understand. As your reputation grows and your calendar fills with increasingly prestigious engagements, you begin to see how music intertwines with the vast machinery of Roman commerce, politics, and social climbing. Every invitation carries not just artistic opportunity, but economic calculation, both yours and your host's. The melodies that float through marble halls are supported by invisible networks of patronage, rivalry, and financial maneuvering that would surprise even the wealthy guests who assume music simply appears when summoned. Your fees vary dramatically depending on the occasion, the host, and the delicate matter of social positioning. A simple dinner party for a prosperous merchant might earn you enough to live comfortably for a week, payment in silver coins, good wine, and sometimes bolts of fine cloth that you can trade in the markets. But an imperial gathering? The compensation transcends mere money. Gold, certainly, but also access to circles that can transform your entire career, recommendations that open doors previously barred, and the kind of reputation that makes other wealthy Romans compete for your services. The scheduling itself becomes an art form. Rome's social calendar operates on rhythms known only to insiders. The senator who always hosts his most important gatherings during the Ides, the wealthy widow who prefers intimate soirees just after the new moon, the merchant princes who throw lavish parties to coincide with successful trading ventures. As a musician, you must navigate these patterns while managing competing demands for your time. Disappointing a patron can mean lost income for months. Accepting too many engagements in a short period risks exhaustion that could damage your performance when it matters most. Payment methods reveal the complex hierarchies of Roman society. The nouveau riche often pay in cash, clean, simple transactions that reflect their straightforward approach to social climbing. Old patrician families prefer gifts that acknowledge your artistry while maintaining proper distance. A fine instrument, rare sheet music copied by skilled scribes, or introductions to other musicians that expand your professional network. Imperial households operate by different rules entirely, their payments often delayed for months, but carrying the weight of official recognition that transforms your social status throughout the city. You learn to read the economic subtext of every gathering. Hosts who insist on the most expensive entertainments, elaborate dinner theatre, professional dancers from Egypt, musicians playing instruments of gold and ivory are often making statements about their wealth and taste that extend far beyond the evening's enjoyment. Your music becomes part of their investment in reputation, your presence at their party, a signal to other guests about their connections and resources. Sometimes you realize that you're not just performing, but serving as a kind of luxury good whose very presence communicates messages about status and access. The competition among musicians is fierce, but rarely obvious. Rome attracts talented artists from across the empire, each bringing distinct styles and specialties that create a constantly shifting musical marketplace. Greek musicians command premium prices for their technical sophistication. Egyptian performers fascinate audiences with exotic instruments and haunting melodies. Celtic bards offer storytelling traditions that Roman audiences find refreshingly different from their own cultural forms. As a Roman-trained musician, you must constantly evolve, incorporating influences from these traditions while maintaining the classical foundation that wealthy locals expect. Networking becomes as important as musical skill. You cultivate relationships with other musicians, sharing information about upcoming opportunities and warning each other about difficult clients. The slaves who manage wealthy households often hold surprising influence over hiring decisions. Treating them with respect and generosity can lead to regular employment, while neglecting these relationships might leave you overlooked when positions become available. Even the servants who tune instruments and transport equipment for performances become valuable contacts who can recommend your services to new patrons. The seasonal rhythms of Roman wealth create predictable patterns in musical employment. Spring brings wedding season, with its demand for celebratory music and romantic serenades. Summer means villa season, as wealthy families retreat to countryside estates and take their favorite musicians along for extended engagements. Autumn marks the return to serious political and business activities, requiring more formal musical accompaniment for important dinners and negotiations. Winter concentrates social life in the city, creating intense competition for the most prestigious holiday gatherings. Travel opportunities emerge for successful musicians, but they come with their own economic calculations. Provincial governors and military commanders sometimes request Roman musicians for their celebrations in distant territories. The payments can be extraordinary. Frontier officials often have access to goods and resources unavailable in Rome itself, but the risks are significant too. Months away from your established network of Roman patrons could mean losing regular clients to competitors. The journey itself can be dangerous, and performing in unfamiliar cultural contexts requires adaptability that not every musician possesses. You begin to understand how musical employment intersects with larger economic trends. During prosperous years, when trade routes flourish and military campaigns succeed, private parties multiply as wealth flows into the city. Hosts compete to outdo each other with increasingly elaborate entertainments, creating abundant opportunities for skilled musicians. But economic downturns affect musical employment quickly and severely. When grain prices rise or tax collection falters, even wealthy families reduce their entertainment budgets, and musicians face sudden scarcity of work. The patronage system adds another layer of complexity to musical economics. Some wealthy Romans essentially adopt favorite musicians, providing regular income in exchange for exclusive access to their services during important events. These arrangements offer financial security but limit your freedom to pursue other opportunities. Other patrons prefer to maintain multiple relationships with different musicians, hiring based on specific needs and avoiding long-term commitments. Each approach has advantages and risks that must be carefully weighed. Equipment and maintenance represent constant expenses that wealthy patrons rarely consider. Fine instruments require regular care from specialized craftsmen whose services don't come cheap. Strings break during performances and must be immediately replaced. Tuning pegs work loose from changes in humidity and temperature. The clothing appropriate for different types of gatherings, formal togas for imperial events, more casual tunics for intimate gatherings, requires investment and upkeep that eats into your earnings. You also discover the hidden costs of success. As your reputation grows, expectations increase accordingly. Patrons assume that established musicians will arrive with the finest instruments, the most extensive repertoires, and the ability to adapt to any situation without advance notice. The pressure to maintain and constantly improve your skills requires ongoing investment in training, practice time, and staying current with musical trends from across the empire. Insurance against disaster becomes a constant concern. An injury to your hands could end your career instantly. Theft of valuable instruments could leave you unable to accept prestigious engagements. Political upheavals that change the composition of Rome's elite might eliminate patrons who have supported you for years. Successful musicians develop networks of mutual support, informal arrangements where colleagues can cover for each other during emergencies and share resources when individual circumstances become difficult. The relationship between musical skill and financial success proves more complex than obvious talent might suggest. Technical virtuosity impresses audiences, but the ability to read social situations and adapt to unstated expectations often determines which musicians receive the most lucrative long-term employment. Discretion becomes as valuable as artistry. Hosts pay premium prices for musicians who can be trusted with sensitive information and who understand the importance of maintaining appropriate boundaries. As you mature in your profession, you begin to see opportunities to train younger musicians, creating another income stream while building a network of loyalty and mutual support. Teaching fees supplement performance income while establishing relationships with the next generation of artists. Some successful musicians eventually transition primarily to instruction, trading the uncertainties of performance for the steadier income of educating wealthy Romans' children in musical arts. If you'd like a complete exploration of the hidden economics of Roman musical life, the money, politics, and survival strategies behind the melodies, let me know in the comments. As your career deepens and invitations expand, you come to see firsthand that Roman private parties are not merely Roman at all, they are cosmopolitan crossroads, vibrant mixtures shaped by every province and far-flung corner of the empire. In the candlelit triclinium, the world's borders seem to vanish. Music, cuisine, costume, and even language conspire to create evenings where guests can wander, at least in spirit, through every territory under the imperial eagle. Rome's obsession with novelty, sophistication, and the exotic runs deep. As a respected musician, you're increasingly called to play at events themed around distant lands. A senator's gathering celebrating a new Eastern alliance, a merchant's feast in honor of a successful African shipping venture, an aristocrat's soiree inspired by the latest Greek philosophical trends. For these nights, your repertoire must constantly evolve. You study new music eagerly, learning to blend the moody minor keys of Parthian ballads, the intricate harmonies of North African chants, the leaping melodies of Gallic harvest songs. Nothing excites Roman hosts more than surprise. You remember a villa on the Caelian hill transformed for one night to resemble a Persian garden? Guests reclined on imported carpets, incense wafted in from braziers, and the music was required to evoke the flavor of Babylon itself. You spent days poring over musical examples brought by foreign traders, recreating, to the best of Roman ability, the intervallic leaps and percussive handclaps that so bewitched your patrons. Diplomats from the East joined in, their delight at hearing the music of home mixed with pride and a bit of gentle teasing over your accent and choices of motif. Other nights, the theme might be Egypt, settling guests within painted columns beneath makeshift palms, filling the air with the deep drone of borrowed double horns and slow, sensual rhythms. These parties have their own etiquette. You're expected not just to play foreign tunes, but to explain, to educate. Guests are curious and sometimes condescending, eager to be cosmopolitan but conscious still of their place atop the imperial order. Your explanations, where the song originated, which goddess it honors, how to dance in moderation, of course, become almost as important as the music itself. Musical exchange often happens in more organic ways too. Musicians from every region of the empire circulate through Rome, some as slaves, some free, some newly arrived with merchant trains, others students funded by distant patrons. You develop friendships and rivalries, late-night duels between a Celtic bard's rapid-fire harp and your own Roman melodies, collaborative experiments with a Cypriot flutist, blending their reedy timbre with your smooth lyre, even, once, playing backup for an elderly Jewish singer whose psalms hush the most boisterous crowd into thoughtful silence. Roman guests are entranced by these collaborations. You watch their faces as your ensemble transitions from a Greek lament full of longing and beauty to a raucous Anatolian work song, then to a hypnotically repetitive Syrian love chant. You learn that music is more than entertainment. It is Rome's best window onto the tastes, passions, and spiritual yearnings of the broader world. You see how a melody immediately brings down the walls between strangers, how, if you play the right tune for the right exile or visiting merchant, suddenly friendships spring up, stories flow, business is conducted, and love may be born. Heat grows at these international performances. Sometimes, a guest of foreign origins leaps to their feet, singing along in forgotten dialects, bringing energy and laughter to the heart of the Roman night. Romans themselves, quick to mimic and innovate, delight in barbarizing their own dances, wrapping themselves in peasant sashes brought from Thrace or shaking rattles highly prized by African mystics. For a little while, everyone is transformed. Romans and non-Romans alike find themselves belonging to a different, magical community built on sound. With Rome at its peak, even the most elite families vie to collect rare instruments, hydraulics from Alexandria, 7-string lyres improved by Cappadocian inventors, deep thumping drums whose origins lie beyond the Pillars of Hercules. Part of your job becomes a curator's, learning the history, function, and performance techniques of scores of unfamiliar instruments. You commission translations of musical treatises, exchange letters with distant colleagues, trade sheet music and stories with everyone from court eunuchs to wayworn bards. Sometimes, these foreign musical influences even provoke political discussion. The success of a new Eastern mode can signal changing winds at court, hinting at shifts in the emperor's alliances or the popularity of a visiting dignitary. On other nights, your too foreign performance might spark heated debate about Roman values and the dangers of letting the empire's heart become too porous. You quickly learn to sense which guests crave innovation and which cling to tradition, adjusting your program accordingly, making each gathering an ever-shifting tapestry of home and away. For slaves and foreigners navigating the city's intricate hierarchies, these musical nights offer a rare moment of equality, a time when everyone is invited to sing, dance, and remember home without fear or scorn. More than once you find yourself caught in a circle of arms, a merchant from Judea, a Greek potter, a Roman boy who has never left the city, swirling together in a dance passed down through millennia, the music, the only language that matters. As an artist, these worldly evenings are your greatest gift and challenge. They sharpen your skills, broaden your world, and help you see Rome not just as the capital of empire, but as a living marketplace of dreams. You sense that as long as the melodies of many lands fill its halls, Rome's heart will keep beating, open and alive, even in times of tension, even on the eve of change. If you'd love a complete episode on the global crossroads of Roman music, the songs, instruments, scandals, and revolutions born from empire, say so below. While Rome's elite assume that music simply materializes whenever they desire it, the reality is far more complex. Behind every performance lies an intricate network of musicians, a shadowy brotherhood bound together by shared struggles, professional secrets, and the constant tension between collaboration and competition. As your career develops, you discover that navigating these relationships can be as challenging and rewarding as mastering any difficult piece of music. The musicians' quarter near the Campus Martius becomes your second home, a maze of narrow streets where instrument makers, music teachers, and performers of every rank gather to share news, gossip, and opportunities. In cramped taverns that smell of rosin and wine, conversations flow in half a dozen languages as Greek virtuosos debate technique with Egyptian percussionists, while Celtic bards trade songs with Roman composers. Here, beneath smoke-stained frescoes and flickering oil lamps, the real business of musical Rome takes place. Competition among musicians is fierce, but operates according to unwritten codes of professional conduct. Direct sabotage, tampering with instruments, spreading malicious rumors, deliberately disrupting performances, marks one as dishonorable and can result in complete ostracism from the musical community. Instead, rivalry expresses itself through more subtle means, the perfectly timed arrival at a gathering just as a competitor makes a small mistake, the casual mention to a patron of another musician's recent poor performance, the strategic scheduling of practice sessions that might interfere with a rival's rehearsal time. Yet cooperation proves equally essential for survival. Complex entertainments require multiple musicians working in harmony, and even the most talented performer needs colleagues for backup during illness or emergency. You develop a core group of trusted allies, musicians whose skills complement your own, whose discretion matches yours, and whose friendship provides both professional support and personal comfort in a demanding career. Marcus Aurelius Harmonicus, a flutist from Greece, becomes one of your closest collaborators. His technical precision perfectly balances your more intuitive approach to melody, and his connections among the Greek-speaking elite open opportunities that your Roman training alone couldn't access. Together, you develop signature pieces that blend Roman structural discipline with Greek emotional sophistication, creating performances that patrons request by name. Your partnership extends beyond music, sharing information about difficult clients, covering each other's engagements when scheduling conflicts arise, and providing honest feedback that helps both of you improve your craft. Livia Melodia, a singer who specializes in the intricate vocal ornamentations popular at women's gatherings, brings different strengths to your musical circle. Her ability to improvise lyrics on the spot, weaving references to current events and personal details about guests into ancient song frameworks, makes her invaluable for intimate parties where hosts want entertainment tailored specifically to their audience. Her gossip network rivals that of any senator's wife. She knows which marriages are struggling, which business ventures are failing, which young people are falling in love before their parents notice. The relationship between free musicians and slave performers creates constant tension within the brotherhood. Slave musicians, often highly trained and sometimes more skilled than their free counterparts, work for nothing beyond room and board, creating unfair competition that depresses wages and opportunities for free artists. Yet many slave musicians are genuinely talented individuals whose company enriches the musical community, and personal friendships often develop that transcend legal status. You learn to navigate these relationships carefully, maintaining professional respect while avoiding actions that might be interpreted as criticism of the slave system itself. Training new musicians becomes both economic opportunity and social obligation. Taking on apprentices provides additional income while building networks of loyalty that can benefit your career for decades. But teaching also requires significant time and energy, resources that must be balanced against your own performing opportunities. You develop a reputation as a patient instructor, attracting students from wealthy families whose parents pay well for quality musical education. These relationships often evolve into long-term connections that provide steady work and social access. The seasonal migrations of Rome's elite create their own rhythms within the musical community. Spring and summer bring opportunities to travel with wealthy families to their country estates, offering escape from the city's heat and noise, along with the chance to earn substantial fees in beautiful surroundings. But these opportunities require careful planning, arranging coverage for regular urban commitments, negotiating travel terms that protect your instruments and ensure appropriate accommodation, managing the complex social dynamics that arise when musicians live in close proximity to their patrons for extended periods. Winter concentrations of social activity in the city create intense competition for the most prestigious holiday engagements. Musicians form temporary alliances during these busy seasons, sharing information about available opportunities and sometimes combining resources to handle large events that no individual performer could manage alone. The Saturnalia season, in particular, requires careful coordination among the musical community, as the demand for entertainment far exceeds the supply of qualified performers. Professional jealousy occasionally erupts into open conflict, creating divisions within the musical community that can last for years. You witness a bitter feud between two harp players who once were close friends, their rivalry poisoning relationships throughout their professional circles. Such conflicts serve as cautionary tales about the importance of maintaining professional dignity even under competitive pressure. The musical community is small enough that reputation matters more than short-term advantage. Innovation becomes both opportunity and risk within the musician's brotherhood. Introducing new styles or techniques can establish your reputation and attract wealthy patrons seeking novelty. But innovation that goes too far beyond accepted boundaries can result in criticism from conservative colleagues and confusion among audiences. You learn to balance creativity with tradition, developing new approaches gradually and testing them with trusted colleagues before presenting them to paying audiences. The economic vulnerabilities shared by all musicians create bonds of mutual support that transcend individual rivalries. When a colleague suffers injury or illness that prevents performing, the community rallies to provide assistance, covering their engagements, sharing income from collaborative performances, offering loans of instruments or other necessities. These informal insurance networks operate on trust and reciprocity, with the understanding that anyone might need similar help in the future. Musical families create their own dynamics within the broader community. Some musicians marry within the profession, creating partnerships that combine personal and professional elements. Children born into musical families often show early talent and receive training that gives them advantages in the competitive Roman musical marketplace. But family connections can also create obligations and conflicts that complicate professional relationships. The relationship between Roman musicians and those from conquered territories remains complex and sometimes tense. Roman audiences often prefer the exotic appeal of foreign performers, creating advantages for musicians who can claim authentic connection to distant musical traditions. But these same audiences expect foreign musicians to perform their ethnic styles on demand, sometimes in ways that feel degrading or inauthentic to the performers themselves. Free Roman musicians must compete with these imported talents while maintaining their own cultural dignity. Secret societies and informal clubs develop within the musical community, offering social connection and mutual support outside the professional sphere. Some of these groups focus on preserving ancient musical traditions that risk being lost in Rome's rapidly changing cultural landscape. Others explore new musical possibilities through experimental collaboration and composition. Membership in these societies provides social connection and artistic stimulation that enriches both personal life and professional development. Religious observances create another layer of community connection among musicians. Many performers participate in the festivals honoring Apollo, god of music and poetry, treating these celebrations as both spiritual expression and professional networking opportunities. Other musicians find community in the mystery cults that welcome artists and provide spiritual meaning beyond the material concerns of career advancement. The aging process affects musicians differently than other professionals, creating unique challenges and opportunities within the community. Physical decline can end performance careers abruptly, but experienced musicians often transition successfully to teaching, composition, or management roles that utilize their accumulated knowledge and connections. The musical community generally shows respect for elderly performers, recognizing their contributions to the art form and their role in training subsequent generations. If you'd like to see a full exploration of the hidden world of musical alliances, rivalries, and survival strategies in ancient Rome, let me know in the comments. There comes a time in the career of any musician trusted by power when art and politics draw dangerously close. As you ascend in reputation and contacts, you begin to notice a new level of tension at certain gatherings. It isn't the harmless rivalry of lovers, nor the calculated business deals you've long learned to disguise with melody. It is sharp, quiet, watchful, an atmosphere that prickles between laughter and silence. You realize, slowly, that your music is not only the backdrop of private pleasure, but sometimes the shield behind which Rome's most forbidden ideas are exchanged. You become aware of certain parties held away from the main avenue, in villas guarded not just by private retainers, but men loyal to household names whose ambitions reach beyond legal bounds. Sometimes these parties are masked as philosophical salons, musical evenings, or improvised celebrations for distant birthdays. Yet, behind the facade, there is an undertone. Guests arrive in ones and twos, not in the showy convoys of public festivity. You notice how the host, never quite at ease, glances frequently at the doors and shadows. The servants speak little, their eyes are wary and their steps quiet. Your role is double more than distraction, less than direct witness. Certain melodies are chosen to indicate safe times for sensitive conversation, others to mask the sudden silence required when someone of questionable loyalty enters the room. You learn to modulate the volume, taking subtle cues from your host's nervous gestures. A hem tugged, a glass raised, a cough that signals, "play louder." Sometimes you're asked to improvise new music altogether, just to confuse any eavesdropper untrained in your cadence or style. What secrets flit through these airwaves? Whispers of reforms that would threaten the Senate's privileges, rumors of unpopular wars, schemes for shifting alliances at the highest level of commerce or command. During certain imperial reigns, such as those of Caligula or Domitian, the stakes are even higher: conspiracies against the emperor himself, plots for swift and bloody change, desperate alliances between families who would betray or risk everything for a new regime. You notice well-known faces appear and vanish, a praetorian prefect who publicly supports the emperor, but here, behind closed doors, listens to pointed complaints and soft questioning suggestions. Royal family members, often women with no formal voice in politics, offer insight and strategy disguised as gossip or laughter, their words wrapped in double meanings that only insiders decode. Every phrase matters. Every song is both shield and signpost. Sometimes you witness sudden rifts. An ally proves a traitor. A guest is quietly ushered away for what you later sense was a severe breach of trust. Occasionally, you're told to forget a particular evening, receiving a generous gift and a warning gaze that leaves you chilled. Your discretion becomes currency more valuable than gold. Patrons trust you not just for your artistry but for your silence, relying on your professional code as fiercely as any senator might rely on his most trusted soldier. And yet, for all the danger, you also feel the thrill of real history being written. You can sense, within the tense hush after a tune meant to mask a strategy, that the fate of provinces or families or even of emperors is being shaped. Sometimes this truth is exhilarating. More often, it is sobering. You come to terms with the reality that your legacy will live as much in the music that outlasts you as in the secrets you never reveal. Musicians trade stories of such nights like old warriors trade tales of battle. You hear of one harpist who played through a thunderous argument that ended with the hosts exiled and their property seized. Another, a young flautist, once performed at a party where the secret police listened from behind pillars, pretending delight but noting faces and phrases for future reckoning. You learn that music is simultaneously celebration and camouflage. Sometimes the only honest moment at the party is in the quiet song played at the night's end as guests slip away burdened by decisions and shadows grow long. The emotional toll is real. You find yourself lying awake, replaying the music and murmurs, trying to recall precisely what happened, what risks you might have unwittingly abetted, what alliances you merely drifted between. With experience, you create rituals to protect yourself, never asking questions, never offering opinions, never repeating anything to even the closest friend. Your music becomes not just service, but shield, a way of connecting with the world while also keeping your own soul safe. In rare moments, you see conspiracies resolved or exposed. The shockwaves travel quickly through Rome's elite circles, changing fates and fortunes overnight. Musicians rarely suffered direct consequences. Patrons blame each other, servants are punished, hosts flee the city, and officials look for bigger targets. Still, you know what it feels like to slip through the nets of power unharmed, and you value your independence and anonymity more than ever. After the tremors of intrigue fade, the days and nights call for gentler skills. More often than you might expect, Rome's private parties are not stages for conspiracy, but for reconciliation, for the healing of old quarrels, the softening of heartbreak, the stitching together of families torn by grief or misunderstanding. As a musician, you witness and become an active agent in these subtle negotiations. Your lyre is not just a tool of entertainment, but an instrument of emotional repair. There are disputes everywhere in a city as diverse and changeable as Rome, brothers divided by inheritances, friends turned cold by political differences, spouses estranged beneath the strain of ambition or disappointment. Hosts know your music's power, sometimes summoning you for this purpose alone, not to entertain or impress, but to ease the way for words long overdue. A well-chosen lament can open the heart of a proud senator mourning a lost son. A gentle nocturne can lower the defenses of feuding sisters so they remember childhood instead of anger. At such gatherings, you play quietly, watching for the subtle signs, a softening of jawlines, eyes meeting at last, laughter returning in hesitant bursts. The music shifts with every mood. Sometimes, a reconciliatory hymn flows from the old temple rites, familiar enough to lull everyone into comfort. Sometimes, the song is new, improvised on the spot for a family struggling to find a shared language of hope. Every note, every pause, is tuned to the vulnerable needs of the group. Healing music is not always soothing, however. At times, it is the rhythms of festivity victory, dances for a household, welcoming a prodigal child, wild refrains for friends mending a break over a shared joke, or even solemn processional songs as rival families come together to bury a feud that lasted generations. You see elderly men weep as a harp's phrase recalls their youth. You notice a matron squeeze her husband's hand, silent forgiveness sealed under the lingering echo of your refrain. In these moments, words may fail, but music sustains what language cannot bear. Your repertoire expands to include not only Roman classics, but healing songs from distant lands. Guests learn to appreciate the gentle repetition of Gallic folk melodies, the uplifting circular dances from Cypriot tradition, each chosen to mark transition, forgiveness, and reunion. The themes of healing also touch slaves and servants. You recognize their pain, and when asked discreetly, offer pieces meant to mend their own sorrows or encourage solidarity in difficult times. Sometimes reconciliation is the work of months, returning for follow-up assemblies where your music marks each step forward. You chart progress in the shifting tones, recall which melody brought the most peace, sense when a party's wounds have closed enough for laughter to return naturally. The gratitude you receive is quiet, rarely spoken aloud, but offered through gestures, small gifts, and the simple trust that you'll be called again for future moments of transformation. There are, of course, limits. Not every wound can be healed. Not all griefs can be softened. You bear witness to failed reconciliations, parties that end in silence, walks home beneath the stars heavy with regret. Still, music's role is never wasted. Even when peace cannot be made, the chance to remember, reflect, and feel is a gift, and patrons come to respect your work as essential, not ornamental. In the rare cases where reconciliation leads to celebration, a marriage, a renewed partnership, a restored alliance, your music becomes the soundtrack to new beginnings. You play, sometimes late into the night, for guests who cannot let the moment end, who sing and dance until exhaustion turns joy into dreams. You grow to cherish these roles, knowing that while intrigue and danger put your skills to the ultimate test, it is healing music that truly roots you in the life of the city. You become a quiet force for good, your legacy imprinted not only in memory, but in the better lives of those you've helped draw back together. In the quiet hours between performances, your role expands in a new direction, teaching. For every banquet, intrigue, or reconciliation you attend, there are twice as many days spent shaping the next generation apprentices eager for skill, children of patricians hungry for polish or distinction, and sometimes even slaves whose musical training will become their household's pride. In Rome, education is an art and a status symbol, and music flows through its very heart. Most Roman elite families expect their children to master an instrument not only as a mark of culture and Greekness, but as a practical tool for future influence. You are summoned, sometimes at dawn, to the shaded gardens or softly painted atriums where the city's children await, each with their own temperament and ambitions. Among your pupils, you see the future of Rome's music, bashful girls who already improvise heartfelt melodies on the cithara, proud boys impatient to conquer every scale, and the quietly talented who say little but let their fingers speak their dreams. Teaching children of the wealthy is vastly different from performing. You must become both patient and persistent, customizing your approach for every household. Some parents want their children polished for marriage prospects, girls who dazzle suitors with clear soprano voices, or boys who can lead the dinner entertainment with Greek songs. Others are motivated by philosophy, treating musical training as a discipline in logic, memory, and self-control. You learn to blend the playful with the academic, turning scales into games, weaving stories of gods and heroes into solfege, rewarding progress with the promise of a new tune from a faraway province. All the while, you teach more than notes. You help children master posture, how to hold the lyre or pipes with dignity, how to bow gracefully to an audience, how to hide nervousness behind a confident smile. You instruct them in etiquette, waiting for the host's signal, listening more than playing, remembering to thank the other musicians and servants. Every lesson is a miniature performance, preparing your pupils to navigate the complex world of Roman society. Discipline is key, but so is sensitivity. You must sense when to push and when to yield, when a child's stubbornness is hiding fear of failure, or when a flash of temper signals a passionate but frustrated soul. You keep a small box of rewards, scented oils for the diligent, honeyed cakes for the shy who find their voice, bronze tokens to mark mastery of an especially challenging phrase. Laughter, too, is a constant companion. Nothing breaks a young student's tension like a silly song or a story of your own clumsy mistakes when starting out. Teaching the children of slaves and freedmen is another world entirely. Here, music is not for status, but survival and solace. You are sometimes paid in food or favors, sometimes not at all, but the gratitude is profound. These lessons are huddled in back corridors, whispered in kitchens, practiced on borrowed instruments. Your students here are quick learners, often more passionate and persistent than the well-fed young nobility. Many will never perform before a grand audience, but for them, music is a private freedom, a way to process sorrow, escape hardship, or simply assert their personhood among the city's endless hierarchies. Apprenticeship is the path for those with real promise. You bring a few into your home just as your teacher once did for you. They fetch water, clean instruments, copy new music painstakingly onto fragile parchment. In return, you give them everything: the theory, the history, the hands-on practice, the tricks of the trade that are never written down, but passed only from master to student. Long mornings are spent drilling scales, learning the subtleties of timing and harmonic balance, rehearsing for performances they'll first attend as your shadow. Every mistake is dissected not to shame, but to teach. Why did the audience turn away at that moment? What would you do differently? What does the room need? Louder, quieter, slower, more joyful? Professional secrets are shared gradually. When to accept a last-minute dinner engagement and when to feign illness. The politics of bowing lower for a senator's wife than for the senator himself. How to handle requests for forbidden songs or dangerous topics, and especially how to keep silent about everything one hears. You teach them the value of networks, encourage friendships with other apprentices, even those from rival studios, and warn about the jealousies that can poison a young career. Within a year or two, your best apprentices are accompanying you at private gatherings, first tuning harps and setting up chairs, then joining light rehearsals, and eventually playing alongside you at small feasts or family teas. Their nervousness reminds you of your own early days, and their successes, however small, become your pride. When a quiet apprentice finally earns a compliment from a notoriously blunt guest, you feel as though you've planted a vineyard, patiently tending until the first grape ripens. Occasionally, a musical rivalry simmers among your students. You manage these tensions with careful diplomacy, never allowing one to overshadow another, and always reminding them and yourself that in Rome's musical world, success comes not only from skill, but from generosity and collaboration. You foster partnerships. You teach them to listen as carefully as they play, to respect silence as part of every performance, and to understand that music can be a path to friendship as easily as it is a path to fame. Teaching becomes, for many musicians, the ultimate act of legacy. The city is filled with sounds you helped shape long after your fingers cease to play. You recognize the flourish in a new serenade on a neighbor's balcony, or the subtle phrasing in a processional hymn, and know that was something given, not sold. In the end, Rome's music endures not because of emperors or coins, but because teachers and students keep the chain unbroken, one lesson, one song, one heart at a time. Good night.